But people think you're shooting people every day.
Do you think people changed the way they looked at you when they realized you were a sniper in the American military?
You're hungry. You've been running for 10, 15 miles. Now your whole team's going to go back. They're going to take all your gear and they're going to go grab what you forgot while you stand here and watch them suffer. You have to make sure that every detail is perfect. Because in the battlefield, especially as a sniper, you have one shot.
From your own curiosity, how far does sniper rifles actually shoot?
The biggest thing you're good at is stalking, what's called stalking, where you're left somewhere maybe 2-3 miles away from a location and you low crawl your way to a certain area. And nobody knows you're there.
What's the difference between a cook and a chef?
Gordon Ramsey was certainly someone I looked up to as well. That style of being a chef, where you're very aggressive, where you almost belittle people, it doesn't work.
You know, when you're in the military, what are you conditioned to believe? So today we are joined by Chef Sal Fernandez. How are you doing, bro?
I'm fantastic, man. Love England.
Yeah, it's honestly, I want to welcome you to the place because I know that we've obviously met before. Why do you like England?
I like the architecture of England. There's so much history, but there's also some modern parts about it. It's like, Dave, you've done the perfect job of mixing traditional and modern and being able to integrate it all with people, food, art. You just don't see that. You don't see that. In the U.S., you really don't see that. It's kind of always either one or the other. And there's just this energy. There's an energy to London and Newcastle that you just don't get in the States, man.
It's crazy because when I speak to anyone from the States, like, they always credit us. Like, there when you said you've did an incredible job of having history and stuff. Like, it's crazy because obviously we've done now. But it's kind of nice, the fact that obviously I know that a lot of Americans are the same. Like, they credit the people for the thing. And I guess it kind of shows, like, being an American, you're obviously proud of your heritage and stuff as well. For the people who kind of don't know who you are, I know obviously you're a chef, Sal, but what was your story like? Where did you grow up and how did you get into the world of cooking?
Yeah, man, it's been a long sort of journey to get here. I started in Napa Valley, California. A lot of people think, oh, you grew up in a rich area and it was easy to become a chef there. But the reality is I was very poor. My dad was an immigrant from El Salvador. My mom was a young American living in Napa, and she was 16, 17 when she had me. Right. My dad was like 21 and just got here from Civil War in El Salvador. So it's not like I had this luxurious upbringing in Napa Valley. But I did get to experience something that I think shaped what I have become now, which is I saw a whole town become one of the best in the world when it came to food and wine, but it came from nothing. And it came from on the backs of immigrants of the labor force. And that, I think, had an influence on me of this is what can be transformed simply through food, art, culture, and I didn't even realize it when I was young, but that's how things changed for me. I started as a dishwasher. 14 years old, I think I was getting paid maybe $6 an hour, $5.50 an hour in those, cash, because you're not supposed to work. And we would eat beans and rice mostly. That was our diet because we didn't have a lot of money. And I get to this little place, it's still there. And I taste prosciutto for the first time. Salami, like really nice salami, a big Italian sandwich. And I'm like, man, this is incredible. Like, this is the best stuff I've ever eaten.
Do you think you realized that more than most people, the fact that you were on beans and rice and stuff? And do you think that's why you took a liking to the food? What were your friends like? What were people around you like? Were they impressed by a sandwich?
Yeah, it's funny when you're poor, you don't realize you're poor. Yeah, so like you don't really think, oh, this is awesome or this isn't awesome. Even growing up in Napa Valley, I didn't realize how beautiful it was until I left. And now when I come back, I'm like, I look around and I'm like, man, it's so beautiful here. But my friends, we were all kind of in the same boat. We were all sort of poor. We're not poor, but we knew that we weren't in the upper middle class. And so I think we were all happy when we got to eat an Italian sandwich or when we got a nice pizza. because that wasn't happening all the time for us. It was a special occasion. We'd get a nice pizza once a month, maybe once every couple months. So yeah, we definitely we knew how good it was.
Because I know that when, this is, again, the fact that you're from the States, and this is why, honestly, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show, bro, because I feel like, again, I'm trying to speak to and connect with as many people as I can from around the world. The majority of my guests are from the UK. Yeah. And having you on, I just want to show the viewers or the listeners like what it is actually like growing up in the States, because I know that over here we're certainly exposed to, if you're kind of broke or you're poor and you live in the States, it's almost like a war zone. Like it's like there's a lot of shootings and violence and things like that. Did you experience any of that type of stuff? What was it like around you?
Yeah, I will say that's the advantage you have there. Napa was a very peaceful place. You grow up, there wasn't a lot of violence. And Napa is sort of the small little suburb that has mini suburbs around it. So you have Napa Valley, the town of Napa Valley, Napa. And then you have all these small towns. So St. Helena, Oakville, Yountville. I grew up in St. Helena, which is an even nicer, very upper class town. So even if you're at the lower end of it, it's a pretty good life, man. I used to walk to school. You rarely hear of any type of crime or anything like that. So don't get me wrong. It wasn't like I was in, like in Chicago or New York in the projects or something like that. I didn't grow up around that lifestyle. It's a different type of poverty. So I'm certainly thankful that I got to grow up in a place like that.
What's your heritage?
Salvadorian, mostly. My dad's from El Salvador.
Yeah.
My mom's American.
Right, okay.
And so I actually lived in El Salvador for 3 years. Mm-hmm. When my parents separated, my dad sent me to El Salvador to live with my grandmother, which is funny because when I got to El Salvador, I didn't speak any Spanish. I only spoke English.
Right. Okay.
So I get to El Salvador, I'm 6 years old, and I have no idea where I am. I'm thinking I'm going on a plane ride. Suddenly I'm in a new country. And my grandmother's there, and I speak no Spanish. And I'm this like American that looks, Latino, but speaks no Spanish. And I'm in El Salvador. Civil War had just ended, so it's a whole. Imagine going from Napa Valley to El Salvador, and now you're going from one of the nicest places in the world to a third world country, and you don't even speak the language. It was a shock. It was pretty crazy to go through that as a kid.
Did you feel like you didn't fit in?
Oh yeah. I mean, the thing too was people looked at me as this privileged American kid. And in reality, I was doing pretty well for a kid. My dad would send probably $25 a week or maybe a month, which is a lot of money in El Salvador. The average wage in El Salvador in that time was right around $10 to $15 a month. The average person was making that. So, my dad was sending me $20, $25. I was living pretty well for a young kid. So a lot of the other kids kind of looked at me like this is a privileged, like little kid that doesn't even speak Spanish. So I learned to speak Spanish, and within a year, but then my dad comes to visit me, and I don't know how to speak English at this point. I lost the language, completely forget how to speak English.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's wild, Dad.
Was your mom white American?
Yeah.
Yeah. So did you experience any racism or anything like that?
Definitely when I came back. Yeah.
Right.
So my mom, her grandparents, one of my grandparents is of Mexican descent. So she speaks Spanish and everything. But when I came back to the U.S., I didn't speak English. So now I only speak Spanish. I'm back in the U.S. I'm a Salvadorian kid. And the thing about Latin culture is there's clash between the cultures as well. So you had Mexican kids, they didn't like Salvadorian kids. But then you have American kids that didn't really necessarily like the Latin kids because we didn't speak Spanish either. So I was bullied by the Mexican kids for being Salvadorian. And I had this Salvadorian accent. We have this different way of talking. So I'd get made fun of for that. And I'd get made fun of by the American kids because I didn't speak English. So I got it from every side, man. It was pretty crazy to grow up around it. But it made me strong. It made me a strong kid. Like I was a tough little kid for sure.
So what were your aspirations when you were at that age, when you were a kid growing up? Obviously, you've got all these different things coming in from different angles, battling adversity, which is kind of the overarching theme of this whole podcast, like people who've went through challenging times and stuff and built businesses or kind of faced certain scenarios in life and came out the other end. With yourself, like, what were your initial aspirations? What did you want to do? Obviously, I know that you were inspired by the sandwich and the kind of foods that you were experiencing, going from, a past of rice and beans, if you like.
Yeah.
What was it actually like for you? Like, what did you want to do?
Believe it or not, man, I was a pretty good footballer, soccer player.
Right?
That was my dream.
You got to be the only one from the States who was good.
Yeah. I was like, I'm gonna play for Manchester United one day. Sort
Really?
of thing. Yeah. I was a big Manchester United fan. Those are the Van Nistelrooy, days, and Beckham, Rooney towards the end of it. So I loved playing soccer. I was a competitor, and I played soccer throughout high school. It's funny because I was a very hyper kid, and my dad would wake me up in the morning and he'd make me go run. He'd go, go run a mile. And then when I'd come back from running, he'd say, here's your workout. And he'd make me work out. And I think he was just doing it because he knew if I got the energy out, I would settle down a little bit. But it made me into a kid that was in really good shape. I was fast. I was strong. So when I would go to the soccer field, I was faster and stronger than most kids because I worked out so much. But I never correlated the two. I just thought, I'm naturally fast and I'm naturally strong. I didn't realize how much of it came from him just making me work out all the time. And so when I got to high school, I was really good. I got very comfortable. I thought, the skills come naturally. I stopped working out as much. I sort of really embraced that I was a good player. And I thought I don't have to practice. I don't have to do any of these things. And those skills started to diminish, and other people were passing me up, and I couldn't put two and two together. And that's sort of when I started falling into food and just working at restaurants, because it was something that came naturally. I was naturally good in the kitchen.
You alright, people? Hope you're enjoying the episode so far. Here's a random one for you. Most of you who are actually watching this episode don't actually subscribe to it. So just do us a favour, will you? Can you click the like button, hit the notification bell so you don't miss another episode, hit subscribe, all that good stuff, because we go up and down the country to try and bring you the best show possible. We're not messing around here, so please show some love, will you? So what was your first experience in the kitchen?
First experience was a pizza place. I was a dishwasher, and the sandwich. And the typical thing that happens in restaurants is, and I've learned, and it's stayed with me my whole life, always be ready to take the position of the person above you. So what happened was, there was two positions there: the pizza maker and then the salad guy, which is garde manger, and then saute essentially is what it is, or oven. The garde manger guy didn't show up. And the chef goes, hey, you think you can make some salads and some sandwiches? I go, yeah, I think I could do it. I had been watching the guy do it, and I thought, I think I could figure it out. And that's exactly how it happened. The guy didn't show up. I take that position. I'm doing dishes, and I'm doing the salad station. So I'm going back and forth, and I'm hustling that night. But that rush, there's dishes now. So I'm going back there. I'm like scrubbing the dishes real quick, running through. There's no dish machine back then. I mean, you're doing it. Everything's manually. I'm scrubbing them through 3-bay compartment, putting the dishes down, and then running back. I just got a ticket. I'm doing a salad, washing my hands, doing a salad real quick, putting a sandwich together. And I'm like, this is fun. Like I like doing this. And by the next week, there was a new dishwasher, and I was on the station. That guy was let go. The guy that didn't show up was let go. That's the thing about Napa. Is it's competitive. There's, especially at the higher end restaurants. If you get sick, if you can't show up to work, there's 10 guys waiting for your spot, just hoping that you're going to get sick, that you can't show up, that something happens to take that position. That competitive drive is what makes some of the great chefs that you have in those areas.
How did it progress from there then? So obviously you've kind of went up in your station. You're in a different sort of area of the kitchen now. Different responsibilities, different roles. You clearly got a bit of the hunger for that.
Yeah.
Did you know then this is something I want to do?
I did to a certain extent. I knew I loved cooking. I knew that I could see myself doing that for a long time. But you got to realize this is 97, 98, early 2000s. Being a chef wasn't what it is now. There weren't any chefs. There were cooks. You were a cook, essentially. You weren't looked at as a real profession that you could build a career off of. You were looked at, okay, maybe you'll become a higher end cook. You might make okay money, but it's not a sustainable thing. Most cooks had two jobs. You worked in the restaurant at night, and you had your regular day job in the day. So it wasn't something that I thought, man, I can make a career field out of this. It wasn't until the French Laundry and Thomas Keller came along in Yountville, or yeah, in really right in the center of Yountville. See, Yountville was this immigrant town. If you don't know Napa Valley, all the wineries are there. Yountville is where most of the immigrants went to live because it was cheaper than the other areas. So you'd have this bus go through right the center of Yountville, and then it would take you to the north part or southern part of Napa Valley. Then this restaurant comes along with this visionary, Thomas Keller, who says, I'm going to transform food, which will transform the culture of this town, which will transform the state, which will transform the country, which will transform the world. Crazy, right? I mean, just this crazy radical guy, New York chef. And within 5 years, he has the French Laundry. 10 years later, it's #1 in the world. And who is working these kitchens? All those immigrants that were working the grape fields, all those people that were always underlooked. He gave that opportunity. So now I'm going through using that same bus that goes through Yountville, where all the immigrants would get on, and it was very poor. Now I'm seeing my first Lamborghini there. I'm seeing my first BMW, Mercedes, high-end hotels, art centers. I'm like, what is going on here? Thomas Keller, food, becoming a chef.
So you think it was that much of a correlation between what he did and the money that was brought to that town?
1,000%. Yeah. I mean, he not only that town, then you had people like me popping up everywhere that realized this is what becoming a chef can do for you. And I think subconsciously or consciously, I put that together. And I started asking, I worked at this little burger place, and there was a guy that was going to go to culinary school. And I asked him, hey, I think I want to be a chef. Like, how do I do it? He goes, well, you can work your way up kitchen, so you can keep working your way up. Or you can, if you really want to be the best, you can go to the CIA, the Culinary Institute of America. It's the best culinary school in the world. It's where basically the top chefs go to train, but it's hard to make it. I said, okay, let me go research that. I go to the library, book some time on the computer there, and look up the CIA. It's in New York City, or it's in Hyde Park, so not quite New York City. And I go, I've never left Napa at this point. I think I went to Nevada once. There's no way I'm going to New York, so that dream's sort of going to sail, and I'll see what I can do, get into restaurants. And I go to high school. Right as I'm graduating, the CIA makes a huge announcement. They're opening their second campus ever, Napa Valley, in St. Helena.
Stars aligning, bro.
Yeah, half a mile away from that pizza place where I started. I'm like, this is it. That's a sign there. That's what I'm supposed to do. So this girl that I'm dating, I said, hey, let's go to the CIA for a tour. They're free, and see what it takes to go there. And I go for the tour. This is beautiful, huge auditorium, and there's a chef right in the bottom. It's like everything was built to center right on the chef, and the lighting and the camera work. And he makes a corn chowder, and I'd never had a corn chowder before. And I remember tasting it thinking, this is incredible. Like the way this guy commanded the room, it's probably 50, 60 of us, the way he had this presence and the way he cooked that so easily. He made it look like it was just a walk in the park. And then he provided this product that was unlike anything I had ever tasted. I said, that's it. I was hooked. From that moment on, there was no coming back. I was going to be a chef no matter what.
What's the difference between a cook and a chef?
Well, a cook can come into a kitchen and make you something that he has a recipe for, or that you tell him, hey, make this hamburger this way. And he'll do a good job. And he'll be repetitive. And he'll probably show up on time. You can be a great cook. There's no problem. A chef can lead and manage a kitchen. Now, a chef now has evolved where you had two types of chefs. You had the chef that was really good at food, but didn't understand business. Or you had the business chef that didn't make great food, but it didn't matter because he knew the business side. That's why there's so many chains in the U.S. There's so many chains with average food, but those are business people. They know how to cater to the masses. They can provide a product that's probably average or decent, but they can make money off of it. And until the last 10 years, really, those are two different things. Where now chefs are becoming savvy, and you have to have the business side with the food side as well. But a chef, that's the difference. A chef knows that there's business. You have to be creative. You have to know how to manage people. You have to know how to lead a kitchen. and manage your life as well. Where a cook is just, you just go and you cook, you just have fun.
Was everyone supportive around you, Sal, when you wanted to take on this kind of role, when you thought this is the career for me? Because again, I know that certainly in the UK, I mean, again, I know it has changed now, but it's 12 hours, 14 hours in a kitchen, sweating. It's not the most glamorous job. Again, I've never been a chef or a cook, but at the same time, I do understand and I do know people who've worked in the environments, and they've all said quite negative things about it, apart from the chefs who were at the top of that kind of spectrum. What was the support like? Did you want to do this for the money, or was it pure the love of the craft?
Man, it's a combination of the two. At first I'm like, hey, I could make some good money. Everyone assumes restaurants make a ton of money. That's not the case. I always tell people, if you want to make a lot of money, you probably shouldn't get into the restaurant business unless you really know what you're doing. You know how to scale, certain skill sets. It's tough to make money in the restaurant business. At first, I would say passion was more the driving force. Just, I wanted to learn something that pleased people. I like to nurture. I've learned that about myself. When I do events, I'll see somebody and I'm like, oh, they're having a little bit of a hard time. Hey, have this little bite of food. And I just immediately I see them cheer up. Nobody gets upset when they get a little avocado toast that they didn't expect to be delicious. and I realized that about myself, that I like to nurture people. And I like to do it in a way that touches their soul. And I think food does that. And I realized that was the driving force. Now, as a chef, especially when you're young, you forget about that because other things become a priority. Making money becomes a priority. How to manage people becomes a priority. And you get lost in that. But to answer your question, yeah, I think that I knew once I was hooked of becoming a chef that I wanted to do it because it was my passion. I didn't think about the money, especially at first.
Was there anyone else you looked up to other than Thomas Keller?
Yeah, I like Marco Pierre White was a big inspiration at first, especially once after the military, because he was very militaristic in some ways. He ran brigades very tough. Gordon Ramsay was certainly someone I looked up to as well. Now, not so much. I would say that style of being a chef, where you're very aggressive, where you almost belittle people, it doesn't work. And believe me, I've had to go through my struggles with it as well. That's how I was as a young chef. Nobody understands that pressure when you're a young chef and a young executive trying to prove something to the world. Nobody understands the pressure you go through and the changes that you have as a person. And you treat people a certain way, not realizing the damage that you could cause. And that's something that I had to struggle with for my first 4 or 5 years as an executive.
It's crazy because you see people like Gordon Ramsay, who I think's brilliant. I'm a fan of Gordon. But when I watch his stuff, certainly when he was doing all the TV stuff, he did come across like he was just very like in people's faces, telling them to fuck off and all the rest of it. But it seemed like that worked. That was the way. That's how you command the room. That's how you get the respect. But clearly that's not always the case. There's another way to understand that up-and-coming chef, to understand that executive in the kitchen, what that pressure's like. In your journey, how did you understand how to navigate that? Like when you were the executive, when you were that guy in the kitchen, how did you handle that pressure from the top guys in the kitchen?
Well, the kitchen will tell you because you'll lose staff. There's something about it. I think there's a battle of being that way. Now, I agree with you. I'm from a military background. I went to the military, so I know that way is more effective. Now, is it more sustainable is the real question. Is it something that you can do for a very long period of time? Do you burn chefs out? Do you belittle chefs to the point where they don't even want to be in the career field anymore? That's what the real question is. And is there a middle ground? Because what I realized was, if you want to be effective, and you can't argue, Gordon Ramsay is one of the most successful chefs of all times. So obviously something he did works. But I think that when you look at who can make it in that environment, it's a very small amount of people. And I went through that environment and I thrived in it. I loved it. I like that pressure. I like somebody being direct in your face. But most people don't. Most people don't like that.
See, the thing is, when you're talking about them, that small, the select few people who can make it, I guess, it's kind of proving the point. Gordon made it, but
Yeah.
all the hundreds of chefs under him didn't, clearly, because no one knows who they are. So it just goes to show that kind of method probably works for the top guy, but the people underneath, again, could probably burn out, move career field, whatever it may be. You mentioned, obviously, military background, and I guess a lot of people who are tuning and listening to this, because the theme of the podcast, we've had a lot of fighters on, we've had people in the army, we've had, different types of disciplines and stuff, but people like to understand the mindset of someone in the military. I know that you were a sniper at one point as well. I want to discuss that. How did you get into the military, and what was your role?
Well, I told you I wanted to go to the CIA. That was my dream. I was hooked. But I applied, got accepted, and then they hand you an invoice, first semester, $40,000. That's a lot of money, especially for culinary school. And that's, you're talking about it's cooking. I didn't have that kind of money. So that dream, I thought, man, this dream's gone. And I'm looking for ways. I'm saying, how can I go into culinary school? Now, I also didn't tell anybody. Because, again, being a chef wasn't a thing back then. And me telling my family, hey, I want to be a chef, they would have thought I was crazy. Even worse, I'm going to go into the military, possibly, because they give you a scholarship to become a chef, to go to culinary school for free. I mean, they would have thought I was nuts. So I apply. I'm looking at different scholarships. I apply for this. I do the sheet thinking it's like a scholarship through the military. It's going to be like a weekend thing, a reserves thing. Recruiter calls me. He says, let's meet up. Sells me on the Air Force. I thought if I'm going to go to any branch, I'm going to the Air Force. I always liked the Air Force for some reason. I was really into it. Sign up for the Air Force. Don't tell anybody. I don't tell my mom. I don't tell any friends. I just signed up. I knew that they would pay for my schooling. And probably 2 weeks before I'm leaving, I set my mom down. I said, I got to tell you something. I did something a little crazy. Now, I didn't tell her I went in to cook because I want to be a chef, because that really would have, she probably would have, I don't know what she would have done. I said, I'm going to the Air Force. And she goes, you're doing what? So I joined the military and I'm leaving. I'm going to the Air Force. And she goes, you need to go back. Like, you need to tell them you're not going. I said, it's done. I signed the paperwork. I leave in 2 weeks. She looked at me like I was crazy, man. And that's what I did. I left. 2 weeks later, I was gone. I said bye to my brothers and sisters. And nobody in my family was in the military. Not a single person. I'd never shot a weapon until I got into the Air Force. I didn't even know how to load a gun or how to load a pistol. But I went into the Air Force. I went in as pararescue, which is special forces. And I went through boot camp, got to the pararescue. And I wanted to do well. I was dating a girl, and I ended up getting engaged, like every young military person does. And she said, "Oh, I don't like your lifestyle that you're going to be going through. You're going to be all over the country, and I can't do it. I want to start a family." So I quit. I quit pararescue, which is my biggest regret, but my biggest lesson early on as well. And they give you an option to go into what's called a holdover, where you spend 6 to 8 weeks doing basically nothing in a dorm. Or you can go into one of the career fields that always needs people, which is military police. That's what I did. Went into military police. By the next week, I was training. A couple of months later, I was in New Mexico. I ended up getting married to that girl that I was engaged to, and she ends up leaving in the end. Great lesson. Yeah, I really learned you have to do things for yourself. You have to always put yourself first in order to be able to help others. I made that decision of quitting, and it's the one thing that I've quit that I regret to this day. I still think about it. I wish I wouldn't have quit. But it's made it to where when I tell myself I'm going to do something, I don't quit anymore. So she leaves, and some sniper slots open up in our base. And our base is called CPEC, Close Precision Engagement Course. And we had a pre-course, a pre-CPEC, before going to the actual course in Texas on our Army base. And that course was extremely difficult because you're trying to take the best of the best. You want to take the best from your base to represent you, essentially. You don't want to send somebody that's going to quit. So we prepare you. They would prepare you there almost twice as hard as what actual sniper school was.
What do you do in that preparation?
Oh, man. What don't you do? The first thing that you prepare for is, you believe it or not, you don't really shoot that much. You prepare yourself physically and mentally. Everything is mental. You get there at 4 a.m, and they give you a list. I remember they give you a list. This is your packing list. This is what you need to have ready, and this is how you want it packed in the backpack, right? Probably 20, 30 of us, maybe 40 at that time. They line you up. Where's your packing list? Oh, here's my packing list. Here you go. Yeah. And then they check it. All right, let me see your bag. Open up the bag, and right away, people forget their packing list. That's when it starts, man. They start throwing stuff. They start unpacking your bag. So you learn attention to detail from the second you get there, and it's intense. And think about 15, 16 hours of just getting yelled at. Every little thing that you do is scrutinized. And so you have to make sure that every detail is perfect. Because in the battlefield, especially as a sniper, there is no second chance. You have one shot, maybe two if you're lucky. So you can't come back from a mistake. And the attention to detail, that's what that prepares you for.
In that preparation process, when you're getting things wrong, what are the repercussions?
A lot of physical activity. It's a lot of peer pressure too. So, for example, if you were forgetting something, you know what they would do? They would stand you up, and they would say, "Here, have a donut or have a sandwich." And you remember this: you're going 10 hours, you're hungry, you've been running for 10, 15 miles. They say, "Here, have a sandwich." Now your whole team's gonna go back. They're gonna take all your gear, and they're gonna go grab what you forgot, while you stand here and watch them suffer. That's how they build that team. That's how you learn to look out for each other. And those are some of the things you do, but mostly physical. Push-ups, sit-ups, bear crawls, going through sand, going through mud, carrying stuff, running. If you'd forget, we had a flag. You had a flag bearer, and you'd carry this flag everywhere we went. And we had a routine when we'd get somewhere, we'd set everything up. But when you're tired, disoriented, you just forget stuff. You'd forget the flag, man. And they would realize that you forgot the flag, but they would let you go 10, 12 miles and then say, "Where's the flag?" I'm like, fuck. Back you go, 10, 12 miles, man. You're going back to pick up that flag, And then they would say, "We have the flag the whole time." So, just mind games.
Was there any point in that journey when you wanted to quit?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, quitting, you realize, eventually I became an instructor, but quitting is infectious. You would go the first 2-3 days, nobody would quit. And you'd be like, "All right, we're doing pretty good." You'd get confident. Then one person would quit, and it was done. Once one person quit, it was like everyone else who was thinking about quitting was quitting. Only the strong would survive, man, because it's a mental game. And you realize it's not physical. We had guys that were 6'2", in incredible shape, quit after 3 days. And then we had guys that were, 5'6", 5'7", 110 pounds soaking wet, that made it through the whole program, that would carry the weight of their body and just had the attitude of not quitting. So it's all mental, and you really realize that. But yeah, man, there was several times. And the instructors, their whole job is not to get you to quit, but to get you to either understand that you're strong enough to do the job or you're not. So they're constantly like, "Oh, you'll be rucking, you have a rucksack, 100 pounds basically, with your weapon, and you have to carry your weapon everywhere, full gear." And they'll say, "Hey, it's hot, 110 degrees, 100 degrees in New Mexico. It's hot in the day, super cold at night." And they'll tell you, "We can get you in the truck. We have water. We have Gatorade. We have a nice little sandwich for you. All you got to do is quit. You quit right now, and you can be comfortable." And they're constantly messing with your mind. Or they'll see your friend struggling. "Hey, if you quit, we'll help him out. We'll give him some water."
Crazy that, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is like sort of like mental manipulation, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
just to try and... But I kind of understand why they do that, because they need to know which, cat amongst the pigeons. They need to know that. When you were actually a sniper, I mean, again, I know there's going to be a lot of people who understand what the job of a sniper is, but how can you explain what your job is to actually do?
Yeah, people think that I never went to the middle. I never deployed or anything like that. But people think you're shooting people every day. The reality of it is it's quite the opposite. Most of I know this isn't like the sexy thing to say, but most of it is pretty boring. You're observing. You are a engineer of being able to scout things out. You're able to see differences. So the biggest thing you're good at is stalking, what's called stalking, where you're left somewhere maybe 2-3 miles away from a location, and you low crawl your way to a certain area, and nobody knows you're there. And you have a ghillie suits that are camouflaged, and you know how to navigate through terrain. A lot of the sniper training is that you navigate through terrain while people are trying to find you, and then you're able to take shots from remote places where nobody knows where you are. But anyways, most of the time you're doing that, and you're just observing. You're taking notes. Whenever we get to a location, we would do a drawing of everything that we saw. What time people were coming in, what time people were going out, what kind of weapons were around, what kind of cars, license plates, distances. Okay, how far is that light pole from the main house? How far is that car from the light pole? How far are stop signs? A lot of these things that when you have distances, you can make quick calls. For example, most poles are 100 yards, right around there, or 10 yards in between, and then a whole road will have 100 poles. So you can determine these distances. So if you ever have to take a shot, or if you ever have to say, oh, this person's 20 yards away, or 20 meters, or 40 meters, you have those things identified quickly. And in those situations, being able to have quick data, that's the key to everything.
I know you weren't deployed, but was there a reason why you weren't? Or did it not come up? Because I'm assuming if you got the call, you would have been going. So were you basically just waiting to go?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was waiting to go, anxiously waiting to go. I always thought I have all this preparation. I have all these skill sets. And it's like being a sports player and never getting into the game, sort of. Always practicing and knowing you're really good at practice, but you never got to go into the game. But in reality, it was probably good. I never had to deploy. I never had to do anything overseas like that, and there's a reason for that, I think. But it definitely is one of those things that you wonder, like how it would have been.
Because I was going to say, I think it is kind of a blessing, because I understand the anxiousness and the frustration that you wanted to kind of put them skills into practice. And I get it, because you're training to obviously fight the opposition or whatever, or to protect a certain thing. But ultimately, to put a sniper's job into practice is to shoot somebody.
Yeah.
So it's when you say that I wanted to do it, it's mad, because it's almost like I wanted to shoot someone. That's how I see it.
Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
You're not trying to, you know what I mean? But did you not fear that? Like, I may have to. I mean, I get it. You trained to do this, but did you ever think, I don't actually want to have to shoot someone?
Yeah, I mean, that's your main thing, is you realize you're doing a job that's very dangerous. So a lot of times when you're doing target practice, you say, okay, one day that's probably going to be an actual human being, and that's going to be a tough decision. But you just hope that it's for the right reasons as well. And I guess that's where, when I think about it now, I think back and think, it's good maybe that I didn't have to do that, or even make that decision, or have to have that on my conscience necessarily, of going overseas and doing something like that. Now we did do things around the base there mostly, but yeah, it's definitely something that you think about, but you try not to. You focus on what you're doing, on the training, and yeah, it's tough. I will say, for anybody in that career field, you have to have it's a different type of mindset. It's a different type of person that does that, for sure.
Do you think people changed the way they looked at you when they realized you were a sniper in the American military? Because I feel like, again, I know that, you'll get people who'll turn, especially in the UK, someone might become a police officer, and then you find that they'll realise who their true friends are, because not everybody trusts a police officer because they think there may be things they're doing in their own social groups, or it could be taking drugs, whatever it may be. And then they're like, well, actually, we don't want to include him anymore because he's part of the police now. Did you find that people change around you? Did they look at you any differently, or did they just support you?
I don't think so, man. I think most people don't understand it. They see what they see on TV. The military people understand it. So in the Air Force, in the Air Force we call it CPEC, the close precision engagement. So in the Air Force, most people are like, oh yeah, he's a CPEC guy. Like it's not that big of a deal, whatever. So I think military people don't see it that way necessarily. Now, obviously, there's some snipers that are legendary, like from Chris Luttrell and things like that, but I think most people just are kind of like, oh, that's cool. That's a cool thing. I also don't disclose it that much.
Yeah, of course.
I don't go around telling people like, yeah, I was a sniper. I tell close friends. I'll tell people when I meet them and they ask me my history. I might disclose it to them, but I rarely do. I don't talk about it that much.
I know. We talked in the car before we got here. I know there's certain things that you won't talk about, which is, I appreciate that. I totally understand. And obviously, you're pursuing something completely different now. But what I did want to ask is just, from your own curiosity, how far do sniper rifles actually shoot?
If you don't know by now, I run a business called The Content PT. I create content for influencers, PTs, online coaches and fitness brands all around the world. So if you are someone who's in need for sexy content for your social media, or you really want to maintain a competitive edge in your industry, drop me a DM on Instagram.
Oh, I can give you, I've shot 900 meters easily. Yeah.
That's mental.
Yeah. I remember when we were in Texas, the key to a good sniper is his spotter. And I had one of the best spotters, my partner. He was an incredible spotter. The real skill in being a sniper is the spotter position. That guy gives you where you need to be angled, the wind direction, speed, and he does it in an instant. That is the real skill set. The person shooting is just pulling the trigger. Don't get me wrong, there's skill set to that. Trigger squeeze, cheek weld, keep your eye on the target. There's skill set to that. But the spotter is the one giving you everything. Have you ever shot?
No.
So when you're shooting rounds at that distance, you have what's called trace, and you can see the round going through the air. Now the spotter, a really good spotter, can see the way that trace moves. So you might get a round. See, rounds don't go straight. Rounds go up and down. And you can see, in a lot of wind, you can see a round go up, down, and then turn right to left and a little left to right, because you can have crosswinds. Mm-hmm. And that spotter, if he's really good, he can see that pattern and he can tell you, change your mills, change your scope to this setting, that setting, or shoot from this area, whatever. And it's funny, you think there's all this technology with shooting, but it's very basic. You have a sock that has sand in it. And you have to make sure that weapon is in your shoulder perfectly. And to raise the weapon up or down, you squeeze the sock with sand. That raises the weapon up. Or you sort of let it go, and that raises the weapon down. It's
Really?
very basic, yeah. I mean, it's just a very basic thing, So you're here, you're squeezing, or you're letting go a little bit. That weapon goes up, down, and then there's nice light, very light on the trigger. Good cheek weld, and you're keeping your eye, down the range.
Because I'm assuming there's breathing techniques and all sorts, isn't there?
Yeah, you always shoot from the bottom of your breath. Yeah, so a lot of people think you would go up and hold it, but the reality is that's not very stable. Your best shot is going to be when you release. You're at the downside of your breath, and then that's when you do the really slow, nice trigger squeeze. You over squeeze, you're gonna pull that weapon. That shot's gonna probably miss right. If you go too slow, and you're going to anticipate that sort of back, it's going to come back on you. That's not good either. You have to have a nice steady. We used to, put a little mark on our fingers to make sure that that's where we were shooting from every single time. Everything's so important.
It's absolutely crazy that, you know what shows you're American. It's when you said have you shot before? Like,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
obviously
true.
made
Yeah,
over mate. It's 10 years for looking at a gun. So you know what I mean? Like,
that's true. There's no
it's just the
weapons,
way
yeah.
you see it. Like
Yeah.
the majority of people haven't shot over
Yeah,
here.
that's true.
The closest they get is to going to some kind of range in Texas or something like that.
Yeah.
I'm assuming. So no, it's crazy that when you're in the military, what are you told? Like, what are you conditioned to believe? What's the sort of agenda? So is it to protect? Is it to kill? Is it to, like, what are you told? Because obviously any kind of person, whether you're a sniper, whether you're a cop in the military, no matter what it is, it obviously takes a certain type of person to understand the narrative. Everyone's got their own, but in order for someone to do that and potentially take a life or to defend someone or something like that, they've got to really be on board with that. And I just want to know personally, like, what do they tell you?
Man, I would say, for me especially, you have this sense of I'm serving my country, and that's the way I saw it. Was I am serving my country, and what I get in return is the satisfaction of knowing that I did that, and now they're giving back to me by allowing me to create my dream. That's the way I saw. This might not sound good, but I almost saw it as a transaction. Like, this country's done so much for me. Let me give back, and then the country will give back to me again by allowing me to go to school and accomplish my dream. So I think service is huge. A lot of military people, for us, it's all about service. You're serving the country. You're protecting the country, protecting the Constitution, the values of the United States. Now, I think that's gotten lost a little bit in the last couple of years, for sure. But definitely when I went in, I had that sense. I was very proud. I was honestly a very proud military person. I was proud to say I served in the U.S. military. I served in the Air Force and got to do things that most people will probably never do.
Yeah, I think it's remarkable. Like, I think it is remarkable, mate. How does it compare to being a cop in the military?
Oh, being a cop in the military, there's so many different aspects to it. There's like a security cop. There's a law enforcement cop, which is more like your traditional police that does the city. I was a security cop, so I secured specific buildings, and it was like a security cop. I was like, man, my job was not luxurious. Even like doing sniper stuff, doing CPEC stuff wasn't luxurious. Most of the time, you'd go out at 2, 3 in the morning before anybody's awake, and you get to a location, and you would be laying down there because you have to be low all the time, and you'd lay down there for 12, 14 hours, and most of the time you see nothing. You're looking at empty grounds, and occasionally you'd see like animals passing by or something, but in reality it's kind of very bland, very boring job.
This is just a personal question, right? Because again, I know what you mean. I can imagine, like, a lot of people see snipers and they're like, oh, it's, they see it in the movies and they see all that stuff and it's the hero. There's obviously a lot of people who are now celebrities who've been snipers and stuff.
Yeah.
Obviously, the downside is, it can come with, you can lose your own life. But the kind of boring side to, looking at buildings, seeing animals and stuff. What happens if you shot someone accidentally? Like, if you thought something and you just shot, because you pretty much got a license to kill, haven't you? Yeah. How does that work if it was an animal or just a normal civilian or something like that? Like, does that go on?
Well, you have rules of engagement everywhere you go. Mm-hmm. So the biggest thing when you go to a mission is you have these rules of engagement. You rarely take a shot without asking.
Right, okay.
It's very rare. And even if you're looking for a specific target, you have to have a certain range of, I know that's the target. So you can't just be like, oh, that guy looks like he's it. Let me shoot him. It doesn't quite look. It's not quite like that.
Maybe it's a dumb question, to be fair.
Yeah, so there's rules of engagement, and every place has different rules. So in the Middle East, you have certain rules of engagement. When you're like I was just in the States. We had rules of engagement as well. So if we saw something, we had to call it in, and then you have cameras everywhere. So you could have a drone, you could have other patrols that had different viewpoints, and you could say, oh, that's the specific target, or that's the specific thing that we're looking for. And then you had to get verification, and then you had to get verification to take the shot. You ask for the shot, verify I can take the shot, and then they give you a verification. So it's not one of those things. Now, does it happen? Yeah, I'm sure it does. It probably does happen. Yeah, it's happened in the history of several times, but it's rare. It is rare.
So what were you actually training for?
We were training for missions overseas, mostly.
Was
There's
there any particular occasion that you were
Iraq mostly,
Yeah.
and then that time we were in Iraq quite a bit still. So this is 2008, 2014. We're kind of on the back end of Iraq, and a little bit like in Qatar and some of those countries. So we were mostly training for Middle East stuff. Now in the base I was in, we had specific missions as well that we did, but those aren't missions that I can talk about.
No, that's understandable. So I wanna get out of that scenario now. Obviously, I know that you'll be able to say it better than me, but from my understanding, I know that you are a chef consultant as well. I know just yesterday you were giving consultancy work to people in a kitchen from the other side of the world, and you've opened up bakeries and top end kitchens and stuff like that and restaurants. For the people who are like, right, we understand Sal, we understand he's got this love for the cooking industry, the food industry, cuisine, if you like, military based, very methodical type of guy, sniper like approach. The reason I say that is because I know how specific you need to be doing something like that, and clearly it's a transferable skill. You've got to be a certain type of person to even look at the military, never mind progress in the military, to then going back into your first love, the food. What is it you actually do, and what have you done in the cooking world?
Well, now I'm actually a consultant. I'm a chef consultant. I do have an executive position as well, an executive chef position in Indiana that I take on. So my life in the last 8 years has been a roller coaster, just a complete roller coaster. The thing about being in the military is there's a level of comfort. Everyone sort of has the same mission, where you get back into the real world and you realize everybody's goals are different. And now the things that you thought, the way that you could push people and all these things, everything's different. You have to adapt. So for the last 8 years, I have been in Indiana, in a small town, and I had the chance to work at this really incredible restaurant that I started with some, what I thought were partners. And my goal was to be the Thomas Keller, of Indiana, this small town, just like Yountville, and I can create a culture with food. And I did that. I had this restaurant that I ran and basically got it to the top. Got nominated for one of the highest food awards that you can get in the U.S., the James Beard Foundation nomination for Best Chef in the Great Lakes region. But in the last 2 years, my life has changed. I used to be extremely overweight, about 300 pounds almost overweight. And I went through a divorce again. And and same sort of patterns. I went through a divorce and I realized that I had to change my lifestyle. I was very unhealthy. You think you're invincible, especially when you come from the environment that I came from, that you can't be unhealthy, that you're always gonna be in good shape and all these things. And then I become a chef and I'm around food all day, every single day. And I'm eating, I'm not working out, I'm slowly gaining this weight. I'm becoming unhealthy mentally, physically, emotionally, and I'm not even seeing it because I'm in the restaurant 12, 13, 14 hours a day, 6, 7 days a week with this chip on my shoulder to become the best chef that I can become. So I lose myself in that whole process. I lose myself completely, and I lose staffs, and I become this very angry chef, a very emotional chef that yell at people, and you just don't see that about yourself when you're in it. And it's easy to judge. That's why now when I see chefs like that, I'm like, it's easy to judge them for what they're doing, but you have no idea the pressure that goes through that chef's mind every single day. And maybe it's not even real pressure, which is what I realize now. I mean, I thought I had to do certain things to be successful, and now I'm like, the less I try now, the more success I get. Yeah. It's funny.
Yeah, because I think when the less you try, it's not that you're not trying, but the less you try, the more love and passion you're putting back into something.
Yeah.
And if you do it for the love, you find that all the time. Like the fact that I enjoy doing this podcast so much, we saw it grow. When I was focused on numbers and I want to hit this and I want to do this, it feels like you're always chasing. It's a bit harder. But when you actually do it for the love of it,
I think it's an energy thing. I think naturally that's what you find, and certainly people around you. If you're trying to command a room or you're trying to get people to work for you or believe in your vision, whatever it may be, the more love and passion you have for it, the more inclined to believe in your dream. So, did you become that almost Gordon Ramsay style sort of military shouting at people? Were you that chef? Were you that guy?
Oh yeah. Especially at the beginning. What's funny is I never intended to be that chef. You don't go into it saying, "Oh, I'm going to be the strict, chef." It just happens. You become that because I grew up in that environment as well. The kitchens that I worked at. So I made it to the CIA. I started working in different kitchens. Every time I could expose myself to a Michelin star kitchen, I would do it. If it was for a day, I would go and work there for a day for free, or a month, or any amount of time. So I was going around all these kitchens and seeing a pattern. There's a level of strictness. There's a level of, the chef has the ability to just control every single aspect of everything. And I wanted to be like that. I didn't realize I didn't have the skill set to manage people outside of a military environment yet. So I was managing as if I was still a sniper instructor, as if I'm still in the Air Force. And in reality, these are people with different goals, they're different mindsets. And I didn't know how to take that puzzle and move it around and adjust it and be able to work my personality and my management style around it. I just didn't have that skill set. So I took a lot of heat, man. I lost a lot of staff that, looking back, I say, man, I wish I could have treated this person better or differently. Or maybe if I had the skill sets I have now, I could have given them more success in their career. But I didn't have that. I didn't have it at that time.
I think it's unbelievable the fact that you've took restaurants from a level to the top of the game, James Beard Awards, all that type of stuff. I think it's, for me, mate, and this is the reason, Sal, like when I get people on here, I want people to be a master in their discipline. And just doing that just kind of shows your credibility doing this. So it's unbelievable to see. You clearly are dedicated to this. I mean, I can tell people who are not in the room right now and people who weren't privy to the conversation we had before the podcast, like it oozes out of you, your love for this. And it's I get a massive buzz off that. Like it inspires me to see that. So you've definitely got to just keep drilling this one because it's only going to get bigger and better for you. Yeah. I want to ask, when you say you did take these restaurants from say here to the top, what does that look like? Like, when you say, do you mean you're literally turning people into millionaires? Or do you mean you're just improving their food slightly? Because I think there's a big spectrum where people think, yeah, you get nominated from awards, but actually how far was that compared to where it initially was?
Yeah, that's such a good question because people think there's so many different levels of a restaurant being successful. There's some restaurants that have incredible notoriety, but don't make money. Yeah. Or if they make money, it's very minimal. And there's the opposite. There's restaurants that make a ton of money that aren't very good. So how do you define success? I would say with the first restaurant, with my first executive chef position, I was able to elevate that restaurant in an area where food wasn't part of the culture, and make it one of the best restaurants, arguably in the country at that time, in its category. And
what was that category?
We were probably a semi-casual, not like super high-end fine dining, but a little bit middle of the road. And the great thing about that place was that if you had your anniversary with your wife and you wanted to come in and celebrate that and feel like you were at a Michelin-style restaurant, you could do that. But if you were on a Saturday afternoon, you wanted to watch a football game, American football, and with your friends or with your brother, and you want to sit at the bar and have a pizza, you can do that also. It was a very versatile restaurant, and I was very proud of having that environment. So in that category of more of a casual setting, with the ability, what I describe as a hybrid fine dining restaurant, where you can have fine dining and casual at the same time, we were certainly at the top. I mean, the food was beyond most places, and the service and the wine list and cocktail programs was top notch. I mean, it was definitely up there with some of the best.
How did you? I understand you've obviously spent years in the kitchens and stuff, but did you specifically do anything to upskill yourself, like looking at wine pairing and things like that? Is it something that you're just passionate about outside of the actual thing? Like you always want to know more, coming up with different techniques. I know, obviously, for the people who don't know, you're actually in the northeast of England right now, or filming this podcast. I know that there's a venture that you're looking to pursue here as well. So,
who knows, we might all get a bit of Sal in England as well. And I think, again, bringing your expertise to a place like this, I know that for me personally, right, I understand that I've did the fine dining stuff. I've experienced all the lovely restaurants in London and, I mean, around the world, to be fair. But for me personally, mate, like, I like a beer and a pint. I like a burger and a beer. That's genuinely like, or give us some fish and chips. Like, I'm not that bothered about the finer stuff personally. Like, I love it when you go to some place, it could be just down the road in Sunderland, and you just find some little greasy spoon, but the food's mint and it's cheap and the big portions. I love that stuff because I'm a proper foodie. Like, I love a good scran. Yeah. So when I find them little gems, like, I almost don't want to tell people about them. It's almost like, nah, that's the spot I can't do. Like, I like that place. Do you know? It's weird, but everybody knows about, you know, the restaurant at the Shard, or everybody knows about this restaurant or that restaurant, or Sexy Fish, or whatever, the different bars and places that people go to. But not everyone knows about them little hidden gems, the little independent places, which is a shame for the business, I guess, because less people know. But I feel like they've got a touch that these chains just don't have. The stuff that I've saw on your Instagram accounts and things that you do look very high end now. Is that something that you sort of lean into now?
I do, man. I've fallen into that category because, but not in. I don't know if intentionally I've done that, but it just seems to happen where I fall into these higher end restaurants. Like the restaurant I'm in now, it's called Trey on Main. It's in this very higher end part of Indianapolis, and it's in the perfect location. It's got this incredible artwork all around it, and it's something that just sort of fell on my lap, you know, and I embrace it. But what I do when I go into what's a high-end place is I try to make it approachable. So someone like you who, not everybody wants to have a Michelin star dinner every weekend. But what you do want is Michelin style service. You want to go somewhere where you feel special, where as soon as you walk in there, there's a different vibe to it. There's an energy that you get from going, and then you try the food, and it's familiar, but it's different. You know, there's little things about it that you're like, oh man, this is fish and chips, but there's something different about this fish and chips. There's a different elevation a different preparation that you know there's been thought put into this. That's what I like to create. That's the way I like to do fine dining now. I don't think that I won't say I won't chase a Michelin star, because I think every chef dreams of having a Michelin star one day. But I now tend to lean more towards chasing the guest experience. I want the guest to have an experience where they say, oh man, I had a rough week, I had a rough day, but I went to that restaurant and it changed the way my whole perception of the week was, because those 2 hours were so incredible for me that it doesn't matter what happened before. And that's what restaurants do that. The current person I work with at Trey, he says, this is where people get to go on vacation for 2 hours from everything they have to deal with in life. And we have to make those 2 hours the best we can possibly make them for every guest. I think it's great.
What's your favorite food?
My favorite food is Italian, man. I love Italian. And I've been able to do something that I think a lot of people aren't doing, which is merge Italian food with Latin food. You know, you hear a lot of Asian and Italian, sort of that fusion happens quite a bit. French and Italian happens quite a bit in fine dining. You see a lot of raviolis and French kitchens and things like that. I like to merge Italian with Latin cuisine, and not a lot of people are doing that.
No. So again, it's putting your own take on these things. I want to ask you about, because again, when I'm looking for restaurants, I'm looking at social media. That's the first place I'll go. And whether it may be, let's just say for argument's sake, Salt Bay.
Yeah.
When you look at Nusret, when you look at these type of places, how much of, I mean, not necessarily that one, but places like that, which are massive on social media, they've done this mad campaign, they've got some face of the business, which are doing these crazy viral videos. How much of that is changed the way we look at food? Because for me, like, I've been to some of these restaurants, right?
Yeah.
And I know that although it looks unbelievable on social media, I've had a shit experience there. The food's just been bang average. It's just been literally quadruple the price. Like, there's just nothing about it. I'm like, give or take. Again, I'd rather go back to just having a burger or just having a nice meal anywhere. Yeah. That's just middle of the road, some good food. You enjoy it. You get that little breakaway. There's a different experience. Maybe it's me. Maybe it's just that experience I'm looking for. But how much of social media has changed the way we look at food now, and how important is that?
It's one of the most important things, in my opinion. You're talking to a guy that 2.5 years ago, didn't even use Instagram. I mean, I was completely against it. Very old school, like, I'm not using social media and all this stuff. But what I realized was it is necessary now. That is how you get the word out on the restaurant. But it hasn't changed. This is how it's been like this for years. It's just now it's social media. Before it was newspapers. Before then it was articles, magazines, and then it was TV. It's been the same. And several chefs have said this, but the biggest thing is if you make the best food, say you make the best food in Newcastle, right, but nobody knows about it, is it the best food? You know? And that's the battle. But it's always been, okay, you make the best food, but you can't focus on social media and all these. Or you have a great social media presence, like you say, in some of these places, but the food is average. Well, most people say that's bad, and I say there's an opportunity there. There's an opportunity to do both. Why don't you take people with skill sets like you, who can brand restaurants, who know how to create content that sells, and then you take people that have skill in the kitchen, and you mix the two, and you make it to where it's incredible online, and when you get there, it's even better. The food's better than what you saw online, you know. So the whole thing of under promise and over deliver. So what you see online is already great, but when you get there, it's 10 times better.
That's the key.
That's the opportunity that people are missing. Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about Michael Sartain. And the reason why, obviously, we've both got a mutual friend in Joel.
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of people, I think it's a little bit different in the UK to what it would be in the US. I know we're quite a bit behind when it comes to like these leadership programs and mentorships and have these communities. I'm actually part of multiple myself, so I understand. I spend X amount of money a month on being in these communities with people and networking with like-minded individuals and building connections and building business and stuff like that. I love all that. This is what I do. But with yourself, like when you got involved with Michael's group, what was it about joining that kind of program or joining that mentorship or that networking community that done it for you?
It's funny because I've had several people ask me about Michael Sartain and the MOA program, and it's completely changed my life. And I wish that I had a better answer of like, oh, you know, I really studied this program and realized that was it for me. The reality is, man, is I had some money. I had sold my house. I had some money. And I thought, you know, I'm going to invest this money in the stock market or crypto or whatever. And then I realized, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to invest in myself. I'm going to invest in becoming a better leader and learning how to network and learning how to develop some of my skill sets. And then I just started research. I didn't do a research like really in depth. I just started looking at programs that were available and thinking, okay, like that seems like a good one. This seems like a good one. And I did three or four programs. It's not like MOA is the only one I did.
Yeah.
But MOA had the most success. So I joined Men of Action. I actually wasn't going to do it because I was doing another fitness program as well, Bedros Keuilian. I don't know if you're familiar. I was doing Bedros's fitness program, the Agogi program. And that's how I lost a lot of my weight as well. And I wasn't ready. But one of the closers who now I talk to him all the time. I told him, hey man, I wasn't ready for MOA, and maybe you were just closing a sale, but you may not realize that you changed my life by closing that sale that day. So maybe it's just money for them, but I hope he knows that what he did was transform my life from what I was to what I'm becoming now. And once I did MOA, once I got into the program, it was really for me the business side of it, the networking side. I wanted to know, how do I bridge the gap between the average chef and those superstar chefs, the chefs that travel around the world, that network with people that are doing these really big events. You know, most chefs, we're introverts. We like to stay in the kitchen. That's why we're in the kitchen, because we don't like to talk to people. We like to stay in the kitchen. We don't like being in front of cameras necessarily. We like to cook, and we like to stay in the background. I wanted to learn, how do I get out of that eggshell? How do I expand my thoughts? And that's how I got in. That's when MOA came along.
Because the reason I want to bring that up, it was because I understand the power of being involved in a community. I understand the power of being part of a network, a program, or something. And I would advise anybody, if you can afford it, great. But whatever you can, just try and, like, certainly where I'm from, there's not everyone thinks how I do. So they're not, they've got their own things going on, again, which I respect, I appreciate. But when you're a creative or when you're, on a journey, it can be very lonely as well. I know building business, I've been given it everything since I was 19, and only the last 6 years is when things started to do well. But, before that, I know how much of a slog it was, and, I was definitely laughed at and, trying to do these things. And I can't remember how many DMs and emails and stuff I sent to people where I was just blanked, just totally aired. No one wanted to know. And then as things pick up, you start seeing people kind of come back into your circles and stuff. And this is why the power of a community, because it's other people like yourself who understand, who can engage with you, who can even if you just wake up, you join a call with someone, and you get one idea, one bit of accountability, one bit of thing to say, you know what, I'm going to post that thing today. I literally just did a talk the other night about this, like taking action and making that post, booking that flight, taking that photo, posting the video, whatever it may be. You're going to be shit to start with. Mm-hmm. I can imagine when you were going from, washing pots and stuff like that to that sandwich that you had to make. I bet it was a shit sandwich. But ultimately, you've got to be shit to get to the point where, you're taking business from here to there. You're getting all these awards. A lot of people know who you are. I just want to know about getting your skills, whether it's your consultancy skills as a chef or, sort of helping people with your expertise and the things you're kind of doing around the world now and online. How much of that journey's been a slog for you? Like, have you struggled with that? Have you sent all the DMs and had all the knockbacks and the setbacks? Have you had all that?
Oh, man. I've had not just the DM stuff, but I've been criticized a lot. I've had to deal with my past, with being that chef I told you I was, and then now seeing a little bit more success with a lot of people not liking that. They don't like the fact that they see me now doing videos or going to events or, interacting with celebrities, all these other things that I'm doing. I was in a very conservative, smaller town. So imagine being in a small town that has a different mindset. And then now they're seeing this guy from the restaurant that he essentially is the face of, traveling, taking pictures with, black tape girls and Nothing But Heels events and all these other things I'm doing, the Michael Sartain events. I've had people criticize me so much. When I wanted to start building confidence, tonality, camera presence, I started doing these man on the street videos, going up to, attractive girls and asking them dating questions. It was really one of those things that was for myself, for me to say, I can do this and be confident. I took so much heat for that. And people telling me I was a disgrace to my son, that I was a disgrace to the community. Just judgmental, bro. To the point where you're like, why am I doing this? It's so much easier. It was so much easier when I just secluded myself, stayed in the kitchen, played my role, and did nothing else. And then I thought, but I wouldn't be where I am. Look, I'm in England right now. Yeah. I'm from just a poor Latin guy from California, immigrant dad, that for the last 8 years did nothing. Didn't have Instagram really up until a year and a half ago. 6 months ago is when I started changing stuff. Now I'm in England. I've met incredible people. I'm around celebrities, some of the most beautiful models in the world, working with Joel, an incredible artist. The opportunities that have happened simply because I didn't let that affect me and I kept pushing forward. And don't get me wrong, man, there's times that have been hard. There's times when I'm like, it's not worth it. It's embarrassing to a certain extent. They tell my family things. They tell my dad things. My dad's an old school guy. He doesn't understand certain things either. But man, it's tough. But then I realized too, the people criticizing you are the ones that are in the same situation they were in 2 years ago, 5 years ago. 2 years from now, 5 years from now, they'll still be doing the same thing as well.
Of course they will. And the way I always frame that, because when I've had my fair share of that over the years, I always remember that the ones criticizing will never support you anyway. I know it's true. Obvious, but they're never going to help you chase your dream. Yeah. So just keep criticizing, because you've got to just keep using it as fuel. I know it sounds very wishy-washy, a bit cliche, but that is literally like their thing is their thing, and it doesn't matter. Was there a point, Sal, in your journey whether it had been a celebrity or someone that had sort of got back to you or hadn't ignored you, where you thought, yeah, like, I'm on the right track here?
Man, it's starting to happen now. And I don't think I have, 600 followers on Instagram. Like, I don't have this huge following. Yeah, but it's starting to happen now where certain people message me that I'm like, whoa, like this person would have never noticed me before. And now they're
name drop.
They're messaging me, and it's like, that's pretty crazy. Well, name drop, a couple of rappers, Famous Dex.
Really?
Yeah, he does a couple of songs with Rich the Kid. He has a couple of songs with A$AP Rocky. Like, we were in LA, and he came out. And he was just, doing his thing, just, rap. It's funny, you see these rappers and you think they have a whole persona. They're just regular people, man. Like, they're just cool. He's like eating ramen noodles and stuff. I'm like, wow, this is like a multi-millionaire rapper, and he's eating some ramen. But I made him like a little watermelon salad, and he was just like, man, this is the best salad I've ever had. He's like live videoing me on his Instagram, and he's got millions of followers. I'm like, this is my life now. This is what my life consists of. It's a Tuesday afternoon. It's crazy, man.
It's but like, even again, I want to thank you for coming down to have this conversation, Sal. But to see kind of what you're doing, even again, I've only met you once before this, and to see what you're doing, and me and one of our mutual friends, we were talking about this off camera, and we said, to think that lad is from this place in America, and now he's traveling around the world cooking. Yeah. Even that is when you think about that, like, in this day and age, and utilizing social media and connecting with these networking groups and meeting Joel and going around the world and working with models and having this, like, I'll tell you now, while you're on a low following, you'll blow up. 100. There's just, everything is for you right now. But I think it's took the military, it's took the divorces, it's took all the bullshit, the naysayers, the people who didn't believe, it's took all them things, because without that, like, I know you're saying your biggest regret was maybe he's not getting posted out and doing the mission and all that type of stuff. But ultimately, mate, you might not be here now. You've got to just understand that everything happens, and it's happened for this reason, because you couldn't tell this story, you couldn't pursue this dream, you couldn't do all the things that you're doing right now without all that stuff, bro. So I just want to say, honestly, thank you so much for coming on, mate. I want to wrap that up. Obviously, we'll connect again and do another part at some point, mate. Maybe it'll be in the States. Yeah. But yeah, mate, I just want to say congratulations on everything you've done, everything you're achieving. I hope you keep going on to smash it, bro. Matt, thanks for bringing me on the show. I hope to be back like a year, 2 years from now, and we'll be doing incredible things. So I love this platform. I love that you're doing this for other people as well. I think what you're doing is really special. And I'll tell you the same thing, man. Keep going, because I believe you're going to be huge, even bigger than you already are, man, because it's a really incredible thing you're doing. Thank you, bro. Appreciate it, man. Appreciate it. All right. So you've made it to the end of this one. You're brave. But if you like this episode and you want to see more like this, click here and watch it.